small business owners, women and entrepreneurs in the state of Massachusetts, free business advising and implementation support. So if you, again, are not familiar with us, please go ahead over to, after this panel discussion, to smallbstrong.com to learn more about us. And I'll put our links in the chat as well. Without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to our moderator for this panel to get us started. Tracy Whitfield.
Thank you, Victoria. And wow, such a pleasure to be here with all of you today. I am glad that you are looking for information on how to keep your business going if we do enter into a recession, which I hope we don't. So again, my name is Tracy Whitfield. I'm the first executive director for the Coalition for an Equitable Economy, CEE for short. We were formed in 2020 with a mission to ensure equitable access to capital, business networks, education, technical support, and other resources for Black, Latino, Indigenous, and historically underserved small business owners in Massachusetts. CEE's membership include leaders in statewide organizations like BECMA, Black Economic Council of Massachusetts, LISC, Boston Impact Institution, and many others. We are a community-based organization of CDC, CDFI, small businesses, and other organizations throughout the state. So today it is an honor and a privilege for me to be here moderating this panel with these wonderful leaders. They are so innovative, but since we only have an hour, I'm going to dive right in. Before I introduce our panelists, I would like to go over some housekeeping items. If you need this program interpreted in Spanish, you can put your name in the chat and Victoria can put you into the Spanish speaker rooms. Or if you look at the bottom of your screen next to the reactions button, there is a globe that says interpretation under it. If you click on it and you click on Spanish, it gives you the opportunity to also enter that room and hear this presentation in Spanish. So if you can't do that part, just put your name in the chat and Victoria will go ahead and move you right over to the Spanish interpretation room. Another thing is if you have any questions, please put your questions in the chat also. Victoria will monitor them. We don't have to wait to the end to ask questions. However, there will be a question and answer period at the end. So if you feel that you need to get your question in right away, ask it in the chat. Victoria will either let me know or ask the question herself, or we will wait to the end and answer all of your questions. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and introduce our panel. And we will start with Marcela Aldez Matos, and she will introduce herself and where she's from.
Yeah, thank you. And good afternoon, everyone. Buenas tardes. My name is Marcela Aldez Matos, and I am the co-founder and CEO of ARCA HR Solutions.
Thank you. And a little bit about what you do there.
That it's an excellent question. So as the CEO of ARCA HR Solutions, my main responsibility is to oversee all of the areas related to service delivery. And I find a lot of joy in supporting mid-sized and small businesses on all things related to human resources, from hiring and recruitment to performance management, compensation, employee relations, promotions, you name it. So very glad to be here this afternoon.
Fantastic. I'll be getting back to you soon, Marcela. I love the work that you're doing, and you are a great solution for our small businesses that need HR support. JC Morales, you're up next.
Hi, JC Morales, CEO and founder of Surfside Capital Advisors. We are a financial advisory and strategy firm, helping our clients from startup all the way to $100 million in revenue go through trajectory changing events. That could be capital raising, M&A, turnaround, bankruptcy filings, restructurings, you name it. We're delighted to be here.
Thank you very much, JC. Diego Portillo. I think I messed that up, but Diego, I'm sorry.
Thanks, Tracy. I'm Diego Portillo Masal. I'm the director of the Inner City Capital Connections program at the Initiative for a Competitive Inner City. That program is an executive education program for established small businesses in under-resourced communities. We run the program across the US and Canada, serving roughly 1,200 businesses a year across the US and Canada.
Thank you very much, Diego. We'll move right over to Chris Hunter.
Hi all, thanks everyone for being here today. Chris Hunter, I'm at LEAF, the Local Enterprise Assistance Fund. We're a nonprofit community development financial institution. We're based in Boston. We do work nationally and have a very heavy focus on Massachusetts, supporting sort of just historically underserved and disadvantaged businesses. Our work ranges from providing capital in the forms of primarily loans, as well as sort of business assistance, capital advisory services, much like JC referenced. So great to be here and happy to chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And last but definitely not least, Yvonne Espinoza.
Hello, folks. My name is Yvonne Espinoza. I'm the Executive Director of Lawyers for Civil Rights. We provide free legal support to minority and women-owned businesses that are trying to start or that are trying to grow. As part of our BizGrow project, an initiative where we connect for technical assistance, direct legal representation, everything from entity formation to reviewing leases or contracts. So that's a little bit about our work.
Thank you, Yvonne. And I am just happy to say that many folks on here are part of the Coalition for an Equitable Economy and part of our subcommittees. Chris, Lawyers for Civil Rights, and Diego are part of our team. So I know that you guys are going to really enjoy this panel discussion because there are a lot of wonderful people that you will be getting information from. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into the first question, and I'm going to ask that JC Morales answer this question. JC, why are we having this webinar on recession right now? What is a recession and why is it important to talk about it?
Yeah, thank you. So look, I am proud to be here landing from Cayman. I'm in the middle of my vacation, but I thought this was important because typically our communities are lagging in really understanding and getting ready for the economic cycle. And we're having a discussion today about a potential recession because unlike the dot-com recession or the pandemic recession or the subprime market crisis, mortgage crisis recession, the country, given its monetary policy, is heading into a recession, which is largely induced, right? And you may ask yourself, why are we doing that? Well, we're doing that because the country's economy is overstimulated, and you can see that by indicators like the unemployment rate, which at 3.5% is the lowest that we've had in 50 years, right? And inflation is stubbornly high at 6%, right? And as a result, the government has continued to tighten its monetary policy. What does that mean? A year ago today, if you have money in your deposit account, you were getting an interest rate of 0%. Today, you're getting 4.5%. That's on the deposit side. The complete opposite is happening on the credit side, right? And when you think about credit, credit is the engine of the economy, is the engine that oils, is the oil that is put on the engine of the economy, right? The easier to get credit, the more economic activity you will have. And so the way that the government is reacting to monetary policies, and we're going to increase interest rates, right? And that's going to put the brakes on some of these super hot economic indicators. And when I say hot, I mean really hot. Right now, there are 11.5 million job openings in the US, and there's only 6 million job seekers, right? So that's going to put wage pressure, right? If you look at interest rates right now, like I said, a year ago, they were at 0. Right now, they're at 4.5. That's predicted to go up to 6% by the end of the year, right? So that rate of interest rate escalation, right? It becomes really expensive to borrow money. And because it's expensive to borrow money, that in effect slows down the economy. So I'll close it up by saying that about 3 or 4 months ago, Wall Street was predicting a 70 to 75% probability of a recession, right? Right now, that number has creeped down a little bit to 60 to 65%, but it is still highly likely that by the end of the year, we're going to enter into a recessionary environment, which is defined as 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth, right? And with that comes a lot of people potentially getting laid off, right? And that impacts demand, which should impact pretty much everything around the economy, right? Whether it's gasoline or groceries, or if you were a beauty salon, right? People's behaviors, spending behaviors, dramatically change in a recessionary environment. So that's kind of like where we are. In summary, it's a stimulated, quote unquote, recession because the economy is so hot. And the last time this tool was used in the U.S. government was actually in the 80s, 1980s, the Volcker, back in the Paul Volcker years, right? It appears to be working, so things are beginning to slow down gradually. But the reality is we'll still probably be in a recessionary environment before the end of the year.
Thank you, JC. I'm just going to ask folks to please mute your microphone so that we're not interrupting the speakers. And if you do have a question or something to add, please put the information in the chat, and Victoria will either read it or guide me to the chat to read it. So JC, that was great. To me, it sounded like what goes up must come down.
Exactly.
You know, we took the lowest unemployment rate in 50 years. And I'm like, wow, you know, and so we know something's going to happen. And I think you hit the nail on the head. It's important for us to be prepared. You can't predict, but you can prepare. That was an old slogan Mass Mutual used to use when I worked there. So I just, I take it all the time and use it. But thank you for that. And you actually answered question number 2. And that question was, what are some of the factors contributing to the impact of the recession? And so we're not going to ask that again because I think you had a very clear and concise answer to both of those questions. So thank you for that. So I'm going to ask Chris Hunter the next question. What measures can small business owners take to mitigate the effects of the recession on their financial stability?
Sure. And I think the starting place, and I think JC mentioned this, is that recessions are part of the business cycle. This is a regular thing that happens, that sort of the economy, we've gone through this very long expansionary period after the 2008 crisis. Then we had the pandemic recession, and sort of we've been on this sort of a lot of money being injected into the economy. It is, as I already said, like normal for us to move up and down. And sort of during these sort of contractionary periods, the key thing in my mind is generally looking at cash and your balance sheet and how strong it is, so that you're both able to sort of deal with the stability and preservation of the business, as well as to sort of take advantage of opportunities that present themselves. And so as it relates to sort of thinking about and managing cash, really, I think it's looking at the things inside of your balance sheet that would impact your cash. And so on your sort of liability side, do you have debt? Do you have loans? Do you have items that are going to be sort of draining cash away from the business, particularly in this rising interest rate environment where, depending on the structure of what is in your balance sheet, depending on your loans, your lines of credit, those costs can be changing. And then on the other side, sort of thinking about the assets and the sort of operational management of the business, thinking about how am I managing my accounts receivable and accounts payable? Just what are my relationships with my clients and my suppliers? That this is where how quickly you pay your bills and how quickly people pay you for the services that you provide make a very big difference to how much cash lives on your balance sheet. And then at the same time, I think you're also thinking about, well, what are the assets that I have access to? Do I need to hold this as an asset? And when I say hold it as an asset, I mean, do I need to own this vehicle right now? Or should I be leasing something so that I have more flexibility and have more cash on hand? So I think broadly, this sort of cash management exercise is the first place that I think is most important. I think to be able to do that, you need to have a very good handle on your sort of financial position, on your financial records, and sort of where your business stands. And what I mean by that is having a good relationship with a bookkeeping team, whether it's internal or external, an accounting team, so that you know where you are, is incredibly critical. That both allows you to have a sense of sort of what you want to be doing, but also you want to maintain good communication with the creditors, the lenders, the investors of your business, as well as with your staff, as I think we'll touch on more aggressively later. I think when you're in that position to have clarity on what is going on in the business, then you can start thinking about, well, what are the sort of tactics that I can utilize to position myself well? Is that, you know, I need to adjust my staffing level. I need to sort of manage how I hold my assets, or is it just as simple as, let's think about what of my costs are fixed that I'm not going to be able to do anything about if things get more challenging, and what of them are variable that are great when sort of the environment is challenging. So I'll leave it at that, but I think there's a lot of opportunities there for sure.
If I can just add a few more thoughts to Chris's, which so clearly articulated. I think you have to have a granular understanding of your financial picture and be extremely clear about what you're projecting your cash flows to be, not where they are, but where they're projecting them to be. And frankly, if you're running a negative cash flow business, you got to make tough decisions. You cannot delay the inevitable, because without cash, the business goes, into another potential business tool, which is bankruptcy, right?
But I wanted to add a little
Diego,
bit.
I was coming to you. But I wanted to ask you something really specific. So you guys are jumping in, because I was definitely going to go to you and JC. But Diego, this is what I wanted to ask you. Like, so everything that Chris and JC are talking about is great, balance sheets and mitigating your risk. What are the tools out here that can help a small business like mitigate their risk? Like some of the tools that you use in ICIC. And then I was going to also ask Yvonne, like, what should they be looking at in their contracts? So can you tell us some of the tools, Diego, to help a small business that may not know how to read their balance sheet enough, or, you know, what can they do to support themselves in a recession?
Yeah, and I think the first part is realizing that the biggest concern for me about the recession, or even the inflationary situation we're in, is the fear that comes with it, is the lack of understanding of what we're actually talking about, or how it impacts you and your business. So people get very nervous and start sort of panicking about what it is that they do. JC talked about, sure, think the recession and the high inflation and all these things will change consumer patterns, but will they for your business? And if so, how? So I think you need to take a look at sort of your business plan and just go back to your strategy. What is it you sell? How do you sell it? Who are you selling to? And what does that mean if the prices go up? I mean, a few weeks ago, we were all enraged about the high cost of eggs. Does that affect your business? Like, does that really impact me? And do people stop buying what I'm selling if the price of eggs has gone up? I think that a lot of things are general, but also really taking the time out, doing a one-page business canvas, doing an annual debrief with your team, looking at your financials, but just getting a real grasp on your business. What is it you do? Where are you doing it? How are you selling? And then figuring out if all these things are important to you more than anything, because you may not care that credit is more expensive or a little harder to get this year if you're not looking for capital. But if your customers are not showing up, that's a completely different story. So I think just taking the time out, getting the tools to stop and look at your business from its core before you think about everything else. And you asked me to pass it to Yvonne?
I will pass it to Yvonne. I just wanted to say that you are absolutely right. And some folks may not know where to start. And so we have a lot of partners on here today, including LISC and and LEAP and ICIC, JC Morales and Marcella and others on here that offer small business technical support. So if you don't have a business plan or you don't know how to look at your financial statement, these are the organizations that can help you get there. These are the ARCA, I'm sorry I said your first name, Marcella, but ARCA, they can help you understand your business from the financial aspect. And then we have Lawyers for Civil Rights on here that can help you to understand your business on a contract lens. So Yvonne, can you talk a little bit about that?
A couple of thoughts in reaction to what we're talking about here, right? Thinking through risk mitigation, it is really important for businesses to keep in mind if you have, for example, a business relationship that has not been formalized with a contract or an agreement, it would be good to reduce that type of relationship to writing so that you can have certainty and consistency, right? What we want to eliminate is uncertainty so that you can continue operating your business without interruption or with minimal disruption as any type of economic situation unfolds. And so thinking about formalizing those client relationships, those business partnerships is going to be key so that you're not left hanging and people can't just pull the rug from under you. This is also the time to be thinking carefully about, and people have already mentioned this, do you hire, do you fire? Or even do you go into a lease that could be a significant expense in times of uncertainty. And so thinking twice about everything related to HR, employment, contracting, and leasing, I think would be really important for a business, as folks are saying, to mitigate risk. And ultimately, one of the most important things to mitigate risk is making sure that you are properly incorporated and that you have no commingling of funds. And then that way, if the worst comes to pass, and JC mentioned this, bankruptcy, if the worst comes to pass, that your personal assets are protected and that only the business assets are at risk. That is critically important, just as a threshold matter, making sure that you have the legal protection to preserve your home, your personal savings, the money that you need to provide for your family, your kids, etc. And so it is important for you to have a legal assessment on how you're set up for that type of protection and make sure that you're not commingling any funds to preserve those protections. And I would say, thinking from a place, because when we talk about bankruptcy, it's coming from a dark place. Thinking about this as an opportunity. All of you with a small business, or most of you who predate the pandemic, have already navigated uncertainty. You navigated the pandemic. Many of you already had to pivot. And so thinking about those skills that made you resilient during the pandemic, that made your business survive and thrive during the pandemic is going to be important. That resiliency, that ability to pivot, to think about your competitive advantage at this time. How do you stand out from your competition? What is your value-added proposition to make your business stand out? Why you will be positioned to survive while others don't, I think is critical. And so don't lose sight of that. You're already here because you've been navigating uncertainty. And so thinking about that from an assets-based approach to position your business to thrive. And if the worst comes to happen, to make sure that you have the legal protections in place.
Absolutely. Legal protections is so important, and Lawyers for Civil Rights offer you so much advice and so much guidance, and they do have a program that you can get some free services right now. It's a program with Lawyers for Civil Rights and Boston Impact Initiative. So find out about that. But since you did, Yvonne, talk about HR, let's jump into that a little bit. So I'm going to address this question to Marcella. What are some of the effective strategies for retaining key employees, keeping them engaged and motivated during a recession, And how do we keep employees' morale up overall during this time? Because they don't know if they're going to get laid off or not.
Yeah, no, thank you. Really, really important topic of conversation this afternoon. And Ivan, he touched upon on something really important, which is uncertainty, managing uncertainty. And Diego also mentioned this, which is fear. At the end of the day, what we are dealing with as business owners and CEOs, it's with fear, and it's really important to understand and to have a specific strategies to manage the fear that is being created, or that can potentially be created because of a recession. So I know that there are a number of different strategies that can be implemented to ensure that employees feel safe and comfortable, and that's as CEOs and business owners, it's your job. It's to manage that. So there are a number of strategies. I will share a few of them as an example. Number one, communication is super important. Communicating often and being transparent. I believe that everyone benefits from open communication, but it specifically has an impact on the employee morals. Communication is key when developing relationships, specifically with employees, and by being transparent and sharing regular, honest updates on the status of your organization and the industry. That can help increase or create trust, which at the end, it also will further or will increase motivation among the employees. Specifically, like what are some of the specific methods that can be utilized to create that communication and then also bring transparency? It's having monthly organization-wide type of events, or in addition to it, just having the one-on-ones with your employees in which you can communicate, number one, what's happening, like being transparent, what is going on, and most importantly, what are your plans as it relates to the present and also to the future of your organization. That leads me to the second point. So number one, communication and transparency. Number two, sharing your vision. Extremely important to make sure that your employees or everyone at your company understands what is your vision, but that vision also needs to be coupled with or combine with the core values of your organization, as well as the mission of your organization, because that serves as an anchor, and then it helps also to provide direction to the employees, and also it helps to understand that you as a business owner and as a leader have a clear understanding of why is it that you're in business for, and why you need them to be a part of that mission, to believe in your mission. Something else that is important, so I'm going to be moving into number 3, is that sometimes difficult decisions need to be made, specifically talking about layoffs or having to make some changes internally in your organization. I believe, and I have seen this, and I've said this many times, that making decisions, difficult decisions, is not easy, but it should always be done with empathy and love, because your employees, they will feel that, and in addition to it, that will help contribute to the culture of your organization, and that empathy, as well as demonstrating that you care for your employees, it's extremely important. It's also, and moving on into the next one, it's also important to establish aggressive but realistic goals. When we are thinking about a recession, and perhaps thinking that we're entering a recession, it's still important to maintain goals. And to be like very aggressive in pursuing those goals, but at the same time, it's as critical and it's important to build and to create a team that will carry on those goals. But as I mentioned, being realistic. And like I'm a business owner, and I know sometimes how difficult it is to try to juggle with so many things at the same time. I am very mindful, and this is my recommendation also to all of you as it relates to how much or how little you're giving to all of your employees. Like mainly if you're thinking about a layoff and knowing that perhaps the employees that will stay with you are going to need to do more. It's important to be realistic and to set realistic goals also for them, but that communication it's important. And then at the end, like once you establish those goals, I think that is also a critical to make sure that your employees have the support that they need to achieve those goals. It's important to establish what are the low-hanging fruits that they can go after. So just with the main idea of helping them have develop a sense of accomplishment, really important as well. So I think that those 3-4 elements that I just described are really important to maintain the organization going, and most importantly, to make sure that everyone is rallying around your goals and objectives, and also that the morale of your organization stays as high as possible.
Thank you, Marcela. Those are great points. You answered a lot of the HR questions that we had and the employee and retention questions, but I want to open this up to any one of our panelists. Like, how do you all, we know this is coming and it's nerve-wracking. Communication is key, and you're communicating with your team that something can happen and may happen down the line. How do you support your own mental and physical health during these times? Like, and do you offer support systems like that to your team or staff, or is it something offered in your organizations? And whoever wants to, maybe JC.
Well, look, I think that navigating uncertainty is stressful enough. I think that it's really important that you seek expert advice where it's needed. And I'm not, you talk about mental, physical. I was thinking more from a business health, right? So that comes in the form of a good legal advice, good strategy advice, good accounting advice, right? The one thing that you should not be doing as a business owner in times of uncertainty is relying on your gut feeling, right? Gut feeling is the enemy of clarity. And what you're trying to do is add clarity in dealing with a very unpredictable and uncertain economic environment, right? So get help. Get help from those that are experts on their field. And we have many of them in this call today. I didn't quite answer your question, but I think
I
about
like
business.
No, I definitely like that spin, because if you don't have your business structure in place and you don't know what's really going on truly in your business, it's going to affect your mental, which is going to affect your physical health. So start with getting that business in order, and also, talk to somebody if you need to. It's okay to do that. And a lot of these small business technical supports, whether you know it or not, will be good therapy for you, right, Diego? I see that you were going to say something.
Oh, yeah.
So,
no,
right,
I was going to say, we all need a kitchen cabinet, whether if you have a formal board of advisors, or you have a coach, or you have 3 friends who you get together with. At some point, we tell business owners and we tell entrepreneurs to fake it until you make it. And I think that's the worst piece of advice that we give to business owners. You can't fake everything all the time to everybody, because it's going to implode. So you got to have somebody. You got to have a group of people that you can be entirely honest with and say, here's where I am, here's where things are, here's what's going on in the business, here's what's going on in my personal life. Like we navigated, as Ivan said, the pandemic. Well, great. You might be a business owner who's doing perfectly well on the business side and then need to take care of family that's gotten sick, or you're having navigating health issues, or whatever. So at some point, yes, having a group of people that you can rely on, that you can be entirely candid with and say, here's where I am. And whether that means today I just need a hot cup of coffee and just lay it all out, or we need to talk about my finances because here's where I am and here's what my numbers are doing, or I don't know where that next pivot is coming from because we pivoted 4 different times over the last 2 years and I'm tired of pivoting. All these things are real. It's very real that we're coming off 3 years of being told that you have to be consistently and continuously agile, and you're dancing your way through business and not knowing when the music is going to stop. So just having those spaces to stop and say, all right, I'm taking a breath. Let's stop and see what's going on. Who can I share this with? Communication is great, but you probably can't be telling your employees everything that you feel at every single moment. They do need to feel like you have a plan and you have the strength to make things happen. So where are those moments where you can stop, and who are the people you can stop with and get that energy to get up the next morning and do it again?
Thank you, Diego. I appreciate you saying that because I know I have me a kitchen cabinet full and they probably get tired of me, but thank you for that. I love over communication. Let me know up front. I don't care what, just let me know up front while you're doing your leadership strategy behind the scenes, but just say we're working on it or something. But over communication for me, that's just my personal belief is the much better method, because I've seen some articles where Amazon or someone laid off a whole bunch of folks in a short amount of time and it was just chaotic for them. So don't do that, guys. And so we are, time is winding down, but I do have did someone want to say something? But I heard someone. Okay. Since you did talk about pivot, Diego, I want to ask Chris, Marcella, Yvonne, did any of you have to pivot your small business to adjust their operations and strategies to be sustainable and successful? And how would you do that during a recession? I mean, I think we just did it during COVID-19, which is not completely over, but let's talk about some of those strategies that you did to, stay sustainable, stay here.
I can get us started. I run a nonprofit organization, so I'm a little bit different. I don't have a business per se. We are not a for-profit business like you guys are. We're a nonprofit organization. But nevertheless, we still have to think through how we show up in the new climate and in the new environment. One of the things that we did is that we started doing much of our work virtually, especially at the beginning of the pandemic. And we also had to reposition a lot of the work that we were doing. So for example, many of the businesses that we represent needed assistance with PPP loans and later with PPP loan forgiveness, things that nobody had ever worked with, but that we had to jump on and really start mastering very quickly so that we can support as many businesses with the PPP loans as possible. And so we started doing a lot more business online, a lot more provision of services virtually, and not just on Zoom, but using other platforms that were relevant for the communities that we serve. Many people are not comfortable with Zoom. They rather use WhatsApp. And so we started doing business through WhatsApp as well. And we started mastering new areas of product and service delivery, like the PPP loans is a good example, so that we could be relevant in the new climate. And so it was about modes of transmission for work and connectivity with the populations that we serve, and also thinking through, the old services that we provide might not be exactly what people need right now. So how do we show up in the new space and provide the services that are relevant? So it was about technology, it was about communication, and it was about fine-tuning the expertise that we have to be relevant for the new climate. And so those are just some immediate examples that I can think of, but I'm sure I can think of many others, but that could get us started.
Thank you. And Alex, I just want you to know we do see your question. And right after they answer this one, we're going to answer yours because I think they are great questions and I want to hear the answers to those too. So Chris and then Marcella.
And I was just going to say, I think some of maybe my thoughts do partially respond to Alex's question. I think it's something that I think Marcella and Diego both mentioned before, is that I think you have to understand your business incredibly well. Like when thinking about a pivot, I think it means you understand what you're doing and you're changing what you're doing into something else. And that can, like, that change can be in a bunch of different ways. One thing that comes to mind for me, at least, is the sort of consumer behavior environment, right, has changed. When I think about Massachusetts relative to the rest of the country, the going to work versus not going to work has changed, right? A lot more people are operating away from downtown spaces and offices, particularly in sort of the greater Boston area. And so that has to change the landscape of how businesses choose to operate, where they choose to locate themselves. And just even thinking about services businesses, how many sort of pricing models sort of have needed to transition from you pay on like an appointment or a session basis to something more like a subscription. So I think when thinking about like pivoting and making changes to the business to sort of improve your sort of resiliency, I think some of it can just come down to, yeah, the same question of who are we, what do we want to do, and taking stock of that so that there's clarity on, yeah, if I change this thing, this is how my customers will respond. Because I guess if you don't have that clarity, it's very hard to make good, effective decisions as a management team, as an ownership team of a business. And I think that very heavily trickles over into how you then interact with staff, right? Sort of making sweeping staffing changes and decisions can, one, alienate people, but it's expensive to train good people to do their job well. And so I think it is often far more optimal to try and maintain staff and sort of explain, look, we need to sort of change how we're doing things and sort of change our hours and so on, than it is to sort of cut off the arm and say, yeah, we're not doing that business segment at all. And so I think that everything sort of relies on just a very deep and intimate understanding of your identity, and that you are not going to have control over several factors that have significant impacts on the business. You don't get to pick your sort of insurance price, you don't get to pick your lease rate, but there are things you can control and you need to sort of understand them before you can make decisions about them.
Absolutely. I love the discussion on making sure you guys understand your business from the financial to the employee relationships to the operations to the marketing. So I'm going to let Marcella answer, and then we are going to start winding down so we can get to some of your questions and hopefully have our panelists answer those. JC, if you wanted to comment after Marcella, please feel free to.
So I think then in addition of understanding, and that was my case, our case at ARCA, in addition to understanding the business and that identity that is so important, the second phase of the second part to my answer is the following. It is critical to create systems and a systematic approach to the work that is being done, because as a business, it was really important for us to make sure that we were connecting the dots and that we were not just doing the one-off, just the one thing, because it's when you have a business, you're dealing with a system internally, and it's important that we create an ecosystem internally. So the way that we went around it, or that we continue, and we will continue to do the same. It's building a governance around processes, procedures, creating expectations also with our employees. So creating that internal system is important, but as equally important, it's also understanding what are the external needs of in the market. Just understanding the market. What's the market willing to pay for, and how we are delivering also those services. That was really, really important to us. I wanna kind of like highlight one specific area that we learned, which is the following. After COVID, so as we're going through the COVID transition, and now as we are potentially entering a recession era, we, to our surprise, we came to the realization that we needed to be very strong on the hiring and recruitment aspect of human resources, because that's what most of the clients were asking for left and right, just as asking us to support the hiring and recruitment efforts. So we did need to adjust internally as it relates to having the right technology systems, response system, and at the same time being agile as it relates to delivering to our clients. So that's like kind of to some degree, Tracy, how we needed to pivot related to the systems that we create internally, but at the same time, being responsive to the needs of the markets, that where those needs of the market more or less were being dictated because of COVID. And now we believe because of the recession, perhaps, and we're beginning to be asked to help with creating transition plans or layoff plans as well.
Thank you. JC, did you want to add anything to this?
Yeah,
and then I have one final question.
I was just going to do closing remarks, right? Which is because I hear the conversation.
One point. One piece of advice that you will leave for our participants.
No, number one is if you survive the pandemic, all right, you'll be all right, right? Because trust me when I say, if you believe what the capital markets are pricing in right now, this will be a softer landing. It's not going to be like the pandemic. Let's all praise, right? Number two, the key of navigating uncertainty with confidence is to plan, to stress test your business, to challenge your own business model, to seek expert advice, right? Anticipation is power, right? So to the extent that you can develop, or start asking the right questions and make information or make decisions with the right information, you will totally be fine. So that's all I would say. It's like I want to end it on a positive note, because after being through the pandemic, I feel that what lies ahead is a piece of cake, and everything in life is temporary, right? So
that's right. That's right. So who wants to go next with their one piece of advice they want to leave?
I will, and that is the following. Is that we have this amazing ecosystem that you described at the beginning, Tracy, and I want all of you to know that you are not alone on this. If you ever need any kind of support, you have a question, you want to vent, like whatever, there is this amazing group of people that are here on your screen right now, talking to you. Make sure that you reach out, because we are here to help.
Oh yeah, there's plenty of information in this chat. And if you have not went to this chat and written down some of these resources, I suggest that you do. I work with a lot of these folks and they have great programs. I've seen some funding questions in there. And, sometimes you reach out for small business technical support, but they also have information on funders and funding that you can apply for. So make sure you get in contact with these organizations. How about Diego?
I'll start by sort of echoing what you, Tracy, and Marcela have already said. Any one of us in this call work together, and I'm happy to take your first call and say, hey, maybe I'm not the person you should be talking to. Let me send you over to Marcela. So reach out to any one of us and we'll make sure that you get to the right place. The other piece of advice for me is realize that you are a business owner. So most of the people who start their businesses continue to think of themselves as bakers or consultants or whatever. And have to just take a moment to say, I am the owner of this business, and therefore have to do a whole lot of work on running the business and not just on whatever it is that you're trying to deliver. So getting all that help on how to run the business efficiently is huge.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Diego. Chris or Yvonne, I seen that you already unmuted, so go right ahead.
I think the most important piece here is to make sure that you have all of your legal entity in place, that you have a legal assessment to make sure that the health of your business is going to be able to withstand the whatever comes next. And so just again, making sure that you have the proper incorporation, that you have the proper contracts in place, all of that, just that simple, what I'll call like a healthy business check would be incredibly important as part of a screening that could be beneficial. So think through that, and we're happy to provide that.
Thank you so much, Yvonne and Chris.
Yeah, I would definitely echo what others have said. And I think the key thing for me in my experience that makes it hard for business to sort of activate their networks and make good decisions is not having good records. So if you are not in a place where you feel like you're keeping good track of your activities, and I don't mean financial records, I just mean of what are you doing? What are you thinking about? And it's challenging. I don't like writing, but it is incredibly important to have good records because it helps us, this entire network of, I think, organizations and people who want to support businesses. It helps you be helped. So that's my one piece of advice.
Chris, absolutely. Thank you. And I'm gonna leave my one piece, and then we're gonna go into your questions because we still didn't answer Alex yet. We kind of did in a roundabout way. My one piece of advice is keep doing this. Keep networking. Keep coming to these type of events. Keep reaching out. You know, get everybody's information and really like contact them. Everyone on here well, we don't all know each other, but we're getting to know each other. You'll see me more, and you'll see Chris, and you'll see JC and Diego and Yvonne and Marcella and Victoria everywhere. And another thing that I say, take advantage of these programs. I have been through Small Business Strong. I am going to go through ICIC. I am doing a program with Lawyers for Civil Rights. All you got to do is try it, and you will gain a nugget out of every single program you go through. One might help you with your business plan. One might help you get set up financially. And I know this is more than one piece of advice, but you just got to jump in and do it. You got to take that leap for yourself. No one can hold your hand through these processes, but you can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. So just do it like Mike. And so now let's go into, there was the financial questions that Alex wrote in the chat. Victoria, do you have those? Can you key those up?
I do. So Alex wrote, small and micro businesses often struggle to manage their budgets and turn to large budgetary or spending cuts to manage cash flow. So question one, how can small business owners avoid making drastic cuts to key assets, e.g. employees, payroll, equity? Who wants to take that one?
JC, Chris.
Well, I mean, I think the issue is if you are in a scenario of survival, right? The tough choices that to make around your expenses, which is what I think you were alluding to, are directly correlated to your revenue. Meaning, what is the value proposition? What is the product that you have? Have you been able to adjust that product to the demands in the marketplace, right? Whether it's pricing or volume, right? Once you can make that, you have a picture on there, then you say, all right, what is the cost base that I need to enact to support that expense? So you have to think about revenue first before you get into expenses. Obviously, with an eye towards survival, right? If you are running an operation that is generating less revenues than expenses, you're going to be out of business in fairly short order, right? You have to have enough runway and make sure that you make sure you have to understand what's called the burn rate, which is how much expense that I really need to incur to support this business, right? So it's not It's a long way of saying that it's not a binary decision of expenses. Really, what do I envision happening with my revenues on my product, right? And that will dictate the expense action. And do I have a viable business model?
That's right. That is absolutely right. Anyone want to add anything?
Yeah, I think the word that stuck out to me in what you wrote, Alex, was harm. And I think the idea of harming your operation, I think, is different from changing the scale of your operation or sort of doing something different. And I think like being able to assess what is a positive or negative in like the sort of dimension of harmful or not harmful, I think is, going through that process as JC outlined of, what are my priorities and sort of what is my sort of customer basis, my market's priorities, and am I aligning myself better with them and their needs by making these changes? Like that to me is not necessarily harm. That's sort of developing an effective business. And it might need different things than what you currently have on both the staffing and on the sort of resource assets, equipment side.
Thank you, Chris. So we are running short of time, but Victoria, there was a question in the chat. Will this recording be emailed to the participants?
Yes. So you all will receive an email with links to all of our panelists, their contact information, their organization, so you can follow up with them, as well as a replay of this panel discussion. And we had just one last question in the chat from Teresa Brewster. What financial resources, grants, loans are available to small businesses that provide professional services, that is consulting, particularly when securing contracts are slow?
Consulting companies.
Yeah.
All I was going to say is I don't think there's a different set of resources. So I guess I agree with a lot of the pandemic relief was focused on industries that at least optically seem like were the most impacted by the sort of changes in just people's behavior and sometimes necessary changes, right? I think the idea of being able to secure capital is primarily driven by your ability to articulate to the capital provider that there's a pathway to returning that capital, right? And I'm not talking about like the interest rate charged on top. I'm just talking about a pathway to making sure that everyone gets paid. And I think that exercise is usually driven by what is your history. And so if what you're saying is securing contracts is slow and it's always been slow, then it's a challenging position. I don't think there's any way around that. And it's articulating, okay, how do we increase that? But I think if you have, look, historically, I've been able to achieve this and I just need to articulate the pathway back to where I've been, I think that's a much more compelling case as it relates to accessing both grant and sort of cost-bearing types of capital.
Absolutely.
Yeah, can I just add to that? There are two government enterprises that are often overlooked by small businesses, right? In terms of the lending side, right? One is Small Business Administration. The SBA has a ton of products, right? That you should familiarize yourself with. And also locally in Massachusetts, Mass Growth Capital. Mass Growth Capital has a suite of lending products for small businesses, right? Either way, what Chris said is right on. They want to get paid back, right? You need collateral, cash flows, and credit history, right? If you don't have those three things, it'll be different to secure a credit at market rates, right?
And listen, a lot of these people, and I know that we are winding down, we are at the 1 o'clock hour. I'm gonna turn it over to Victoria after this comment, and someone had a question on marketing, so we'll try to get you some information out via an email. However, and someone put some grant options in the chat too, guys. Please look at the chat. One thing I'm gonna say, these partners here, look on their websites. Sometimes they have access to capital right on their websites. So make sure you go to the partners' website. There's Beckman, there's LISC, there's BII, Boston Impact Initiative. All of these organizations have access to capital. And if they don't have the capital that you're looking for, they know folks that do. So sometimes you got to pick up that phone and call somebody and say, I see these programs, do they fit me? If not, do you know any ones that do? And they may say, well, you need to get your business plan in order first. You need to do these things to be able to access capital, but it's a start. So I just wanted to say, please do your research, make connections, talk to people. Let's become this like small business community that rocks any other state in the US. And with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Victoria.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much to everyone, Tracy, Marcella, Yvonne, Diego, Chris, JC, for your time, your knowledge, your expertise, and sharing it with all of us. I'm not sure if you've been in the chat, but folks are really enjoying the conversations. This has been really helpful for all of us. So